My name is Daniel Rosen, and I'm the Pathology Residency Associate Program Director at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. The goal of my instructional plan is to help residents recognize the microscopic characteristics of malignant neoplasms of the head and neck. The objectives of my lecture are that by the end of the course, the learner will be able to describe the most relevant microscopic characteristics of the malignant neoplasms of the head and neck, describe at least 3 differential diagnoses for each malignant neoplasm of the head and neck, and be able to describe at least 1 additional test required for the diagnosis. The instructional theories that I apply to my instructional plan are the Cognitivist orientation and the Constructivist orientation. The Cognitivist approach is characterized by the creation of meaningful learning through which learners seek to understand the structure of knowledge. The focus of learning in the Cognitivist model is on the individual learner and on his or her thought process rather than on the external environment. The teacher's role in the framework is to facilitate the cognitive processing by helping the learner learn how to learn and develop the learner's capacity and skills for more effective self-directed learning. Developing critical thinking through reflection is one of the most important components of the cognitivist learning orientation. Information processing theory is a theory of learning that says that the information from the world around us moves from sensory storage to the working memory to long-term memory. For example, if we are reading a book, as we move our eyes across a page, we remember what we just read a second ago. That means that the information is in the working memory, or storage of memories that occurred only a few seconds ago in the past. If things go right, though, we will remember the information in the book longer than just a few seconds. If everything works well, it will move to the long-term memory, which is really just memories that we stored for a person to access later. So how teachers can apply it to help students? It is very important for information to move from the sensory to working to long-term memory. Why? Working memory is very limited. Only a few things can be in the working memory at a time, and they can only be stored there for just a few seconds. This can cause problems in learning. When a student can't get information from working memory to long-term memory, they can become overloaded. Cognitive load involves having too much information in the working memory and not being able to remember anything. So if students are reading a long, complex paragraph and they cannot get information to move from the working memory to the long-term memory, they are likely to experience cognitive load, which will leave them unable to remember or take any information. How can the teacher help students overcome overload? First, encourage attention and rehearsal. The more you are able to attend to something and the more you go over it in your mind, the more likely it is that the information will move to the long-term memory. Second, only present a few things at a time. If the teacher tries to teach a bunch of new material all at once, the learner is likely to forget most of it. Teaching only a few new things at a time can help retain the information better because one is more likely to avoid cognitive load. Third, chunk the material. If you divide information in chunks or small pieces, you are more likely to remember and it's easier to avoid cognitive load. The Constructivist learning theory is one of the newest and most unique learning frameworks. Constructivists believe that the knowledge is formed within the learner by integrating activities and experiences into knowledge and belief. Because Constructivists believe that individuals learn by creating meaning and experience, it follows that the locus of learning in this framework is on the developing meaning, achieving understanding, and assigning significances. A number of medical education strategies, just as reflective journaling, writing practice narratives, and developing course portfolios, can be used to foster a constructivist learning orientation. For my instructional plan, learners have to learn how to recognize the microscopic characteristics of the malignant neoplasms of the head and neck, as shown in this picture. Typically, learners are asked to use a 3-column approach to construct a practice narrative. In column 1, the learner has to describe what they see in a particular case, and in column 2, the learner has to articulate their thoughts and feelings about the case. At a later date, the learner completes the third column of the practice narrative by reflecting on what they have learned. Knowledge can be acquired by finding appropriate online content, books, and journals. Once this activity is complete, small groups of learners can come together to discuss similarities and differences in their cases and describe what their cases mean to them. The group process helps learners to unearth assumptions and discover meanings that they may be framing their clinical practice. To help learners develop reflective thinking, medical educators often begin by asking them to identify a significant clinical experience. After the learner has a chance to recall the clinical encounter, he or she is asked to describe what happened, summarize what they have learned, and speculate on what would have been done differently. Thanks for listening.